Hi guys, welcome back to Peaks 47. In this episode we're going to talk about signal boxes. I'm going to do a bit of a step-by-step guide of how I weathered this up to this point so far. We've put some name boards on it, also done some modifications on this, adding some Midland glazing and windows into it. So we're going to go back in time where I just started weathering this one. So I'm going to make a start on this, get some weathering on it, put some custom name boards on it. Natalie Porter, good friend of mine, actually gave me this box pre-built. She's made a sterling job of it, so if you're watching that, thank you very much. I've been looking forward to sort of getting on this and getting it on the layout. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got these customised signs from Scale Model Scenery. As you can see, it's my station name, Whittington Dale. So I've got two of these, so I'm going to be looking at putting these on both ends of the box first. Now this was another commonplace just below these windows here, but from the research I've done, and thanks to the guys on the LMS Modelling Society page, in 1935 the station names were moved by the LMS from here to each end to get a better view for the driver. So I'm going to go with them since I'm sort of 12 years on from 35. So I'm going to put these on the end. I'm going to weather up the timber, try and pick out some of the detail a little bit, get the roof on, perhaps get a little bit of scenics on the roof, maybe some 1mm static grass sat in the gutter in, something like that. So I'm going to look forward to getting that on the layout. So I also have these fire buckets, so we're going to paint this timber up and then paint the buckets red. I'm not sure where I'm going to put these yet, maybe offset on one side or along the line side, or perhaps I might even get a hut and have these attached to a hut. But this is going to be part of the sort of mini diorama that's going at the far end of the station. There we go, there's one on. I tried using UHU glue to begin with, this stuff, because I figured it wouldn't quite be permanent then and I could pull it off if I ever changed my mind. But that glue was having none of it, to be fair, so I've just used two tiny little dabs of this on each end, and that seems to have held it in place pretty good. It's surprising what a difference it makes just putting a name on. So I'll get this one on this side as well, and then we'll move on to do the weathering. So for the first stage of the weathering, I'm going to just give it a bit of a wash with a black and a brown. So I'm using a black soot and a concrete dust weathering powder, and I'm thinning it down with IPA. And I'm going to just give it a light brush over most of the model, and then if I'm good enough, I want to try and dry brush after some bits of bare timber that are bleeding through, perhaps down the bottom where it's got damp and the paint's got a bit thinner, maybe a bit round the edges. That's my intentions, but I'm going to get the wash on first. So I'm just using quite a small brush, soaking it, as you can see, just running it over the model, and then going to wipe it with a cloth just to wipe the excess off. So as you can see, by just putting a wash on, just picks up the detail that you couldn't quite see before. You can always go over it with a dry brush if you feel like you're overdoing it, just to wash it back in a little bit. As you can see, that's the first basic bit of weathering there. I'll try go over the window frames a little bit, just ever so lightly. I'm just using quite a light brown here now. I'm just trying to get the effect of the paint's worn pretty thin. As you can see, I've added some bits here, and I just want to try and get just a little bit of streaking off the window ledges. So I'm sort of trying to use the dry brush method here, and put a bit too much on, you can always give it a bit of a wipe. Get it a bit dirtier in these corners as well. Nat, if you're still watching, I bet you're horrified, didn't you? This perfect model that you've made, and I'm now absolutely battering it. Quite pleased with how that's coming on. A little bit grubby up the top here. I'm going to probably just clean these down a little bit. It's a little bit over the top there. A little bit more on the windows. What I'm going to do now, before I glue the roof on, I'm going to just run a bead of basing glue in this guttering, and I'm just going to put some 1, maybe 2 mil static grass in there as if it's growing out the guttering. I think that should give it quite a good effect. I'll probably go a little bit of spring and a bit of North Euro, so it's relatively vibrant, so at least you can see it, because I figured if I do it with a sort of a dead grass sort of colour, which would be more prototypical, I'm worried you're not going to actually see it against the tiles. So I'm going to start off bright, and then I can always weather it down with powders if it looks too bright, and then I'll need to try and weather these tiles, which isn't an easy job. I'd struggle with this, but I'll probably use some white, dry brush some streaks on it, and again some little bits of scenics possibly. I need to try and scratch build some of these bits that are missing off the roof at some point as well, but that's what I'm going to do next. I've actually used a summer leaf there by WWS. Probably let it dry, and then with a brush some of it out, just so there's not as much in there, but I quite like the way some of it's just sticking out on the sides. But yeah, I'll let that dry, then clean most of it out and just leave some bits and bobs on there. While that's drying, I can get some paint on these tiles. Right, so as you could just see, I've just painted that in some acrylic sleeper grime to give me my basic timber colour. So I'm going to have a go at weathering these now. I find weathering and painting timber really hard, probably the hardest thing in the hobby for me personally, but I'm going to try and give it another go. I seem to get some good results using powders on MDF because the texture of the MDF, the powders work really well on it. I find anything smooth is a little bit trickier. But I tend to always start with that sleeper grime, and then I intend on giving it a dry brush now with a white, or perhaps more of an off-white, almost an ivory sort of colour, like this matte 103, and then probably finish off putting some brown weathering powders over the top of this just to tone it down, and then finally finish with painting the buckets red. So that's what I'm going to have a go at next. Hopefully it comes out alright. So I've gone for a white in the end, as you can see. Obviously there's too much white on there now, so my idea is to use a weathering powder. This is a Concrete Dust by WWS. I'm sure you guys who watch me regularly probably quite bored of me talking about Concrete Dust, but I seem to get on with it for everything. There we go, that's coming on. It's not too bad. Just try and get some of this dry powder off a bit more, and then I may have a go with a different brown now, perhaps a lighter brown, and just do some dry brushing along these main posts, and that's beginning to look a little bit convincing. So I'm going to use a matte 118, which is this colour here, and again with the dry brush method, just trying to add another tone of brown to it. As you can see, I've painted the buckets, the 5 buckets red now, and I'm just going to try and dab a bit of silver on the end of the hooks. Quite pleased with that. I think that should add a nice little bit of detail to the ratio signal box. So I wasn't sure where to put these, what would be prototypical and what wouldn't. So I had a look online, and I found a lot of examples of them in lots of different places. Some were under the stairs, some had buckets just hanging off the stairs, which I thought was quite cool. But a lot of them are here as well, and I quite like the idea of that. They're going to be seen more on the layout here, so I'm just going to put 2 little dabs of glue on there in case I change my mind. But for now, they're going to sit there. That's almost sort of ready for the board, really. So I suppose in the next few videos, it'll be building up the area at the other end of the station, get the signal box incorporated. So here's the second box that I'm going to do a bit more work on. I need to add some glazing to it. That started life as a dap old box. As you can see, I've put some Midland windows in it. These have came from work, scale model scenery, so we do a Midland windows kit. They don't fit this box exactly. I've had to chop them and modify them to get them in. They're not perfect, but it's certainly a little bit more prototypical now with those in. So I'm going to wrap this video up now. I'm going to do the other signal box you can see here in the background off camera. Perhaps the next video will be doing the scenery around this signal box, and then perhaps starting to do the landscape for the scenery around this signal box. But overall, I think this is 95% complete. I'm quite pleased with it. The Whittington Dale signs that I've got from Scale Model Scenery, I think, add a nice detail. So we've got that now on both sides. Certainly like the P&D Marsh Models 5 buckets. I think that adds just another little bit of detail on there. So Nat, hope I've done you proud. Hope you're not too mortified what I've done to your pristine box. Obviously, again, thank you very much for donating it in a quality build with the pristine job. I think what I've done to it probably represents the LMS in 1947 okay. I don't know if the condition would be any worse than this, but it looks relatively run down to me. So I can add a bit more details to it once it's on the layout. Perhaps, I don't know, we'll have a vegetable patch outside it, and might put one of the Anderson shelters, which is one of the new kits from work, have that near it as the toilets and flowers and stuff around the front. So that's probably going to come up in the next few videos, is getting this bedded in on the layout and finishing the last corner of landscaping in that particular area. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I welcome any of your comments, and I'll speak to you online soon. Cheers.